Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TSNN's live webinar series. Today's webinar will cover the exciting topic of the Big Bang Theory of event content marketing. Our expert moderator and panelists will answer questions during our live webinar in the last 15 minutes of our webinar, so please join in. To submit a question or comment at any time during the webinar, please click on the Ask a Question button on the bottom of your screen. Simply type your message in the box and click on the Submit button. Alternatively, you can join the conversation and ask questions on Twitter, hashtag TSNN webinar at any time. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn the floor to Mrs. Arlene Scholes, Marketing Manager for TSNN. Arlene, the floor is yours.
Hello from everyone at TSNN and welcome. As usual, regarding TSNN's educational webinar series, we are very grateful to offer our audience such amazing industry experts when we dive into topics of high interest. Today we will discuss an issue which we know is not going away anytime soon, becoming more savvy with our event content marketing strategies. This stellar panel will help educate us on the importance of event content marketing, so thank you very much for tuning in. Big thanks go out to our sponsors, Discover, Palm Beach, and OnStream Media. They continue to help us deliver these educational topics to you free of charge. All TSNN webinars are brought to you by OnStream Media, the leader in multimedia webinar and webcasting services. OnStream Media is a leading online service provider of corporate audio and web communications, including webinar and webcasting services. OnStream Media's innovative webinar platform, Visual Webcaster 4.0, allows event managers to easily produce, schedule, and invite attendees to highly interactive, live, and on-demand webinars that can be accessed via a desktop or a mobile device. No downloads are ever required, and the solution can scale to support tens of thousands of attendees. The platform has been ranked number 1 by top 10 reviews and is being used to power today's event. To learn more about OnStream products, please visit onstreammedia.com. Now, Doug McLean, Senior Vice President, Global Sales at Discover Palm Beach County, would like to say a few words. Doug?
Well, thank you, Arlene. First, I want to just say it's a pleasure to partner with TSNN, truly one of the best in class in terms of education and publication in our industry. So thank you all for being here today, and it's a pleasure to sponsor this event. Wanted to just share just a 1 minute of information about the Palm Beaches and some of the exciting things that are happening with us. First of all, for those of you that don't know, the Palm Beaches are located just north of Fort Lauderdale and Miami, about 1 hour from Miami Airport, and about 2 hours south of Orlando. So that's our location. It gives us great access from, 3 amazing airports, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and, of course, Palm Beach International, which those 3 airports comprise 50% of the airlift into the state of Florida. So an abundance of air access exists into the Palm Beaches, and ultimately what we believe that sets the Palm Beaches apart is that you have all the diversity in South Florida without the density. A little bit about our convention center very quickly, just to give you some update. We have a wonderful convention center that is about 10 years old, in total about 350,000 square feet, features a 100,000 square foot exhibit hall and some great breakout space. But what we're really excited about, Arlene, is we are building currently a 403-room Hilton West Palm Beach hotel connected directly to the center, and that's also coupled with about 3,000 total hotel rooms in 3 miles of the convention center. All of that exists about 2 traffic lights away from Palm Beach International Airport, so I don't need to tell you how great that is for a conventioneer or exhibitor or traveler. More importantly, I just want to leave you with this last note before we take one quick look at a quick aerial of our downtown West Palm Beach area. We are offering about over $1 million in contract incentives right now for pre-booking of the new convention center hotel and the convention center and surrounding rooms. So I leave you on that note, and I'm sure Arlene's going to give you contact information of mine if you'd like to reach out to me. But very quickly, I thought I would just say that a picture tells 1,000 words. This is from about 3,000 feet up in the air, but just shows you all of the great assets that exist around our convention center, including some great hotels, a fabulous new $40 million renovated waterfront park, of course, the peninsula island of Palm Beach just across from all of that, and just some amazing assets for a convention or trade shows. So I'd like you to think a little bit about the Palm Beaches in the future. And with that, Arlene, I'm going to hand it back to you, and I appreciate everyone's time, and we've got a great session ahead.
Thank you, Doug. Now allow me to introduce our moderator today, Kevin Miller. He's the founder and president of Frost Miller Group, a marketing communication firm headquartered in the Washington, D.C. area. Frost Miller works with association and independent show organizers, as well as small and mid-market organizations across the U.S. and abroad. The company has executed attendee and exhibitor marketing campaigns for more than 60 events covering more than 6 million square feet of exhibit space. Kevin has co-authored 2 books on marketing communication, as well as numerous articles, and he speaks regularly about marketing issues and trends. Can't wait to learn today. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arlene, and thank you, Doug, and OnStream as well. I only wish that we were actually making our presentation live from the Palm Beaches, but unfortunately we're not. A show organizer's conference or expo's content is likely their most valuable asset. You know, presenters spend countless hours planning and researching and writing and preparing groundbreaking information to deliver to your attendees. And likewise, exhibitors and sponsors invest thousands of dollars to get exposure to attendees. And yet, typically, all that valuable content only gets shared for an hour or 75 minutes during a presentation, or at most for the 2 or 3 days during an event itself. And then the content's gone. Today, I'm very honored and pleased to be joined by 3 experts in content marketing for conferences and trade shows. I'd like to just spend a minute introducing them to you. Elizabeth Johnson is the Director of Public Relations and Content Development for Frost Miller Group. And in the past 8 years with Frost Miller, Liz has developed and managed content for a wide variety of meetings and expos, ranging from intimate roundtables to mega events with 50,000 attendees. Liz has both association and agency experience, and she works out of New York City. Also joining us is Allison Moser, and she's the Senior Marketing Manager for Digestive Disease Week. She's based in Bethesda, Maryland, and she's responsible for DDW's marketing campaign, including the strategic planning, content creation, and social media. And with more than 14,000 attendees annually, DDW is the world's largest meeting for physicians and researchers in the field of gastroenterology, hepatology, endoscopy, and gastrointestinal surgery. And you can imagine how anxious I was about pronouncing all those things correctly. Also joining us is Martha Sawchuk. She's the marketing director at the American Association for the Study of Liver Diseases in Alexandria, Virginia. She has 9 years of experience in marketing large events to exhibitors, attendees, and sponsors. And in addition to that, Martha has extensive corporate and agency marketing experience. A couple of times during today's presentation, we're going to be asking the attendees polling questions, just to sort of benchmark where we all are in terms of some of the issues that we're going to talk about today. The first polling question is pretty simple. Do you have a documented content marketing plan for your meeting or show? So if you can think about that, an answer will reveal the results shortly. The Big Bang model suggests that at some moment, all matter in the universe was contained in a single point, which is considered the beginning of the universe. Modern measurements place this moment at approximately 13.8 billion years ago, and not 7 years ago when Penny moved in across the hall from Sheldon and Leonard, as many people believe. But we thought that this Big Bang theory was a great way to illustrate the content that's generated by an event or trade show. Because conferences and trade shows generate content in a wide variety of ways. Much of it is generated by presenters during educational sessions and supporting white papers, reports, or survey statistics. But content's also generated during general sessions. Show managers also generate content during press conferences or other media releases that they unveil during the event. And exhibitors and sponsors are also sources of content. You may not think of them that way. But exhibitors present information about the products and services that they offer. And oftentimes they release news about new products during the conference. Sponsors also share content about their companies. And, of course, the Expo's website is a huge source of content, as well as videos and photography that's shot during the show. And all of the social media that's generated during a show by the show organizers and by the show participants is also a big source of content. The content that's generated by the conferences and trade shows gets distributed in a variety of ways. In addition to attendees who are simply there experiencing the content, and of course, attendees can only experience a small part of the content because they can't attend every session or see every exhibit or talk to every sponsor. The content also is shared through print and electronic show dailies, through blog posts during the event, through social media posts and retweets, also other multimedia like podcasts, e-newsletters, e-books, and so on. It's also shared via infographics that summarize the key findings and statistics that are often released by either the show organizers or by the presenters or by the exhibitors. Also through the videos and photo galleries that you find during or after an event. And content is also often aggregated from outside sources, but support the content at the show itself. Sharing content at your show generates a variety of tangible benefits. It helps enhance the event's brand. For example, as a show organizer, if you're trying to position yourself as being your industry's thought leader, then sharing valuable content will support this branding. Also, sharing content will only support how the event itself is positioned as an essential source of information. Content sharing will also improve the organizer's ROI. And later, we're going to talk about how content can be used to generate actual revenue. But also, if you think about it, a show organizer who shares content generated by exhibitors, sponsors, and even presenters, they're demonstrating to those people the value of investing in their show, and they're giving them reason to support the show in the following year. And if an exhibitor or a sponsor realizes that their information, their exposure is going to go on for more than just 2 or 3 days, they're going to realize a much better return on their investment. Content sharing also creates communities and ongoing communication among the participants, amongst the attendees and exhibitors, as well as sponsors and the media, and the show organizers and others as well. And content sharing also helps attendees retain knowledge and provides incentives for future presenters when they realize that they're getting added benefits from the hard work that they put into it. And I think many of us have presented at conferences before. We put a lot of work into it, and we would love to have the hard work that we put into it shared with everybody who's in an event as opposed to the people who are just sitting in your session. But also sharing content is on the show organizer's website will improve search engine optimization and attract new attendees, because obviously the more relevant content that you have on the website, the more likely you are to increase your SEO and improve it. So we should have the poll results posted for everyone to see as well. It's interesting to see that of the people who answered, the majority of the people, 2/3, do have a documented content marketing plan for your meeting or show. That's great news because that means that a lot of people are already doing the right thing, and I think that also means that we should be able to generate some really good conversation, questions here as some of you who are show organizers can discuss your tactics with the other show organizers and content experts that we have right here. So at this point, I'm going to now ask Elizabeth Johnson to talk about ways that show organizers can work with presenters to share their content. Liz.
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, there are a number of ways that you can work with your speakers to repurpose the content that they've spent so much time creating. We're going to go through 5 today. I'm sure there's many more. But the first way would be to encourage your presenters to blog on their own blogs before or after the event about their session and about the fact that they're speaking at your event. You can even encourage them to guest blog on your own conference blog to keep your blog content-rich, because they'll appreciate the additional exposure, and you won't have to work as hard to keep your blog active and engaging. Secondly, you can establish social media chats between the presenters and your audiences before, during, and after the event. This affords you the opportunity to promote the speakers and big sessions, tease upcoming content, and give your speakers some additional benefits with the extra publicity they would receive from the chat. Next, you can create audio interviews with the presenters at the event for future podcasts. The Public Relations Society of America is an example of an association that does this. They develop sort of person-on-the-street interviews, which they post on their website, and also include the links in their email marketing of their events to kind of tease the trends and the topics that are going to be talked about during the upcoming events. You can also make video and audio recordings of the sessions while you're at the event for later broadcasting, whether it's giving the content away for free through YouTube or using it as an on-demand subscription service, which we'll talk more about a little later. Finally, you can host webinars by the presenters after the event. This gives session attendees the opportunity to stay engaged with the topic, and it gives presenters a chance to share the information again or share more information on their topic, while your organization can gain revenue or engagement without having to develop a completely separate webinar series.
Very much, Liz. I wanted to now just take a couple of minutes to ask our show organizers, Martha and Allison, to talk to us about additional sources for sharing content.
Thanks, Kevin. This is Martha. So Liz identified a couple of ways that you can work with presenters to create content, and one of the ways that we've used that's been successful in the past is ask presenters to create short promotional videos about their content. This is a great way to work with them because they can create a video on their smartphone, or you can even mail them an inexpensive camera, like a flip camera, that they can use to create a video about their presentation. And they can share the points that they hope to speak about and what conference attendees can learn from the presentation without giving away all of the data and all the, the meat, the substance of the presentation. This is a great way for them to promote their session, but also for you to repurpose on your site and your social media channels to promote the event as a whole. And then another thing that you can do is, in lieu of asking presenters after they've presented at the meeting or the conference to share their slides via email, you can create a SlideShare account. And for those who are willing to share their presentations, they can simply upload to the account. And that is a little bit more social and more shareable than simply sending an email because it's accessible to everyone and not just those who have attended the session. It can create more conversation around the points in the session if you share it on your blog, things like that. Another way to generate content is by interviewing attendees at the conference. It doesn't take a lot to do this. You don't need a professional video camera, although it helps if you have the budget for that. But you can simply have a staff member or someone that you hire as a contractor ask attendees what sessions they attended and what they learned. And they'll tell you a lot. They will tell you what they liked about it. Some will even tell you what they didn't like. And I find that it gives you a more in-depth view of the sessions because it's coming from the professionals that attend them rather than from association staff. So those are great videos that you can share to show some genuine enthusiasm for your event from actual attendees. And then finally, if you have a show daily or if you have a TV show that you produce each day, don't let this be, as Kevin said, a one-hit wonder. Each of those articles or each of those videos can be a blog post. And each of those blog posts can be a Twitter post or it can be a Facebook post. So I would say don't be shy about taking your content and posting it in more than one place on your social media channels. So one more content strategy for developing additional sources of content to share is to create a Throwback Thursday post. For those of you who are seasoned users of social media, you may have done this before, but for those of us who might be somewhat new, Throwback Thursday is a trend on social media where you share older content on a Thursday, hence the name, and you include the hashtag TBT. You can define old however you want. If your event happened 2 months ago, but you still have content that is relevant to share, you can declare that your Throwback Thursday to 2 months ago. So how you can share that is just the same way you would share any content on your Twitter or your Facebook account. Just put it up there, include the tag Throwback Thursday. I've even seen Way Back Wednesday and Flashback Friday if you missed the Thursday deadline. But that's a way to share things that are still relevant and still timely while not necessarily being fresh and new. And then finally, you can use content from your event that relates to other aspects of your association to kind of cross-promote the two programs. Let's say that you have a special membership category or program for people who are new to the field. If you have presented a session or a seminar for those people at your event, you can take a recording of that event and cross-post it on your website page that talks about that membership category. This will allow you to not only repurpose content from your event, but it will also help you illustrate how your organization provides tailored resources.
Thanks, Martha. To follow up, I'm just going to talk about the last bullet, which is to host social media contests while on site. It's important to reshare user-generated content and create engagement with your audience, and whether it's presenters and attendees who are online. With all of the additional sources of content that we've mentioned here, I think it's important to blend initiatives and cross-promote where possible. For example, in 2014, the DDW marketing and communications departments worked together to identify primary themes based on submitted abstracts and session content that we could carry through before, during, and after the event. We generated buzz before the meeting with blog posts and social media efforts and emails, continued during the meeting with related Twitter chats, podcasts, press conferences, and push content after the meeting with our DDW TV interviews, redistributing articles that were generated by outside sources in our press room, and just really creating a buzz after the meeting so you can also show people who weren't able to attend what they're missing.
Well, thank you very much, Allison and Martha. And I just wanted to remind the audience to feel free to ask questions at any time during our presentation. We will, if there are lots of questions that come in, we can take pauses throughout the presentation and answer the questions, or we can, save them toward the end. But I just want to let you know that if during this presentation a thought comes to your mind or a question comes up, please go ahead and type it in where it's shown, and we'll make sure that we get to those questions as quickly as possible. So now that we've talked a little bit about the sources of content, what about sharing that content? I want to turn it back over to Liz so you can discuss some of the pros and cons of the various different distribution options.
Great. Well, I just want to start with a quick rundown of distribution channels so that we're all on the same page. You can distribute your content via your website, blog, social media, feature articles in your publications or other publications, creating e-books, e-newsletters, podcasts, infographics, photo galleries, video galleries, as well as white papers in a lot of other places. These are all ways you can distribute the content that you've already curated. So now first starting with the pros. The ability to sell sponsorships to cover the cost is a big pro. For example, say you're creating an e-newsletter or an e-book. Content marketing doesn't always have to be an expense. It might be an opportunity to generate new revenue by selling sponsorships to cover the cost of creating those pieces while still promoting your event. Content marketing can also be relatively inexpensive to produce compared to other traditional marketing tactics. Writing a blog post or creating an infographic, for example, that can be widely shared is relatively inexpensive, and you can use sites like visual.ly and Infogram to create basic infographics yourself. Finally, it's critically important for reaching a younger audience, especially via social media and videos. According to Nielsen, millennials are the heaviest video viewers on mobile, watching almost twice as much as the average age group. So if millennials are within your target audience, video is a must for you. On the flip side, some cons would be attendees have different skill levels and comfort levels with particular social media or applications, so you'll want to take that into consideration when selecting your distribution channels. You'll also need to use multiple channels to reach the widest audience. So you'll have to be selective so as not to overstretch your resources and just focus on the channels that have the widest appeal to your target audience. Do those well before you expand your marketing plan further. And just one note, if you're coming from an industry where your content is proprietary and can't be shared freely, using promotional videos or the promotional interviews we discussed earlier to hype up the presentations can get around those restrictions.
Thanks for mentioning that, Liz, and that was something that I was going to bring up as well, because when we talk about this topic, especially with medical-oriented types of events, a lot of the material that's presented by researchers or doctors is proprietary. So show organizers of those types of events are often trying to find ways to be able to share that content. And if any of you in the audience have specific questions about that, again, we have two presenters here that are working on medical shows, so I think that they could probably provide you with great answers on that subject. Another big question that always comes up with show organizers is the concern about giving away the content that's generated by their shows, because they're concerned that if they give it away, nobody will want to pay to see it live. And that's a reasonable concern. But if you consider TED conferences, which we all know about, as an example, you might approach it a little bit differently. TED shares all of their content online, and yet, as you know, they charge a heavy price, $6,000, as is pointed out in this infographic, for attendance. They share their content because they realize that the best way to promote their live attendance is to show the quality of the content and the inspiration that you get, that you receive when you're at the live event, and the inspiration that you get while you're there. So I think any time you are hesitant about sharing the content because you're concerned that people will no longer want to pay to attend live, just think about TED as an example and how many times you yourself probably look at TED Talks, for instance, online, and how you would love to actually be able to attend and be inspired by a TED Talk. An association event or a private show event is really no different. If you have valuable content that you're putting out there, which I'm sure you do, then people will pay to come and see it. And if you share that content when the show is not actually taking place, it's just going to inspire more people to want to actually physically come to the event itself. But giving away content versus selling content is a topic of discussion that we wanted to spend a little bit more time with. So at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Martha, who's going to talk a little bit about how her association has viewed giving away content and selling content. Martha?
Thanks, Kevin. As you mentioned, having content that's recorded doesn't necessarily cannibalize the registration for your live events. We've found, especially in the medical field, that there are more intangible benefits to attending in person than simply getting to see the presentations, although, of course, that's the main reason for attending. But people come to network. They come to see colleagues and friends that they may have not seen since the previous year. And there's really something special about being in a room or in a building with people who all do the same thing as you do and who are passionate about it as well. So I think that simply recording your content and distributing it in different ways isn't something that you should be worried about in terms of how it affects live attendance. If people can attend, they probably will attend. This is the way I look at selling or sharing or recording our event content is as a way to share those great presentations with people who, for whatever reason, are not able to attend in person. So on that note, Kevin talked about giving away content as TED does. There is another model for doing that, and that is selling the content. you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can create a hybrid event, which is a live stream that's going on at the same time as the meeting for those who can't attend. I will tell you that for our liver meeting last year, we decided almost at the last minute, about 2 to 3 weeks before the meeting started, that we were going to live stream one session. So we sent out a couple of emails to promote the live stream, and with just that very short lead time, we got 90 registrations for that one session, and we set the registration fee at $45 a pop, so you can do the math on that, but we had a record year for attendance of our meeting, and we were also able to generate a little bit of revenue on that. It was a win-win, I think, for everybody. You can also opt to record the complete event and offer that on demand. There's a couple of different ways to do that as well. You can sell on-demand access to attendees and non-attendees, or you can include on-demand sessions with the cost of registration. One of the ways that we implemented that was by increasing the cost of registration by a negligible amount. I want to say it was between $25 and $40, and that covered all of the costs for AV recording, web hosting, pushing out the content to the attendees and all of that. So you can really offer it for a quote-unquote free, but yet still make money on doing it. And then the other option is that you can sell a best-of package. Perhaps you don't have the budget, or perhaps it's experimental for you to record your entire meeting, but you can pick some of the best sessions, put together a package, and sell that either as a live stream or on demand.
Yeah, and Martha, I'll just jump in and add that Content Marketing World is an example of a show that sells their package separately from the registration. So if you can't attend the event, or if you want more after the event, you can simply go to the registration page, and one of the options is to purchase that on-demand subscription.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions that have come in, so I'm going to go ahead and say the questions and then ask our panelists to answer them. The first question from Marion is, what's the name of the site that Liz was showing a couple of minutes ago? So, Liz, would you mind telling what those sites were?
Yes. The two sites would be visual.ly, so VISUAL.ly, and then Infogram, which is INFOGR.am.
Thank you. Also, Linda asks if we have some examples of on-site social media contests. So I wanted to ask the panelists if they are aware off the top of their heads of any social media contests out there.
Hi, Kevin. I can help with that. Last year, we ran a contest on Instagram because we wanted to generate some more engagement since it's a fairly new platform. And we encouraged our attendees to post photos mostly within the convention center that we were in, but also within the city, which was Chicago. And they had a chance to win daily prizes. So we picked the best photo each day, and then they won a T-shirt, I think we did. We also gave out social media pins that they could wear around so everyone knew that they were engaged on our different social media platforms. I think it was successful, and we got many, many pictures that were sent to us. All they had to do was upload on Instagram, tag us, and use our official hashtag, which was DDW14, to be entered. And then as staff, we would look each day, pick one, and then announce it via social media so they could come pick up their prize.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, Allison also did a Throwback Thursday campaign where she posted pictures of those attendees who had won their prizes a couple of months after the meeting, and that was fun to see that.
Those are great examples. And during the Q&A, if anybody else has examples that they'd like to share, that would be wonderful. There is one more question that I have brought to back from Rachel Wimberly, and that is, what's the most effective method to put together a content marketing plan that extends throughout the whole year? Is an editorial calendar an example, she also asks. And I think we probably will all have some answers to that question. I think that, Rachel, your thought about the editorial calendar is probably accurate. Some form of calendar that prompts you to push out certain content during certain times to extend the light as much as possible. Martha, I know that you have some specific thoughts about timing for sharing content marketing based on your experience over the last couple of years. Would you mind sharing those thoughts with Rachel and the rest of the audience as well?
Yeah, I do, Kevin. One of the best pieces of advice that I got when we first started going down this road of sharing our content socially was your event has an off season, and it's okay to let it have a natural off season. People don't necessarily want to engage with an event year-round, 12 months a year. They like to get excited before the event, and they're energized at the event, and then the couple months afterwards. And in my experience, that's true. Just looking at our blog traffic alone, the traffic would spike at the meeting, and it would kind of build up before the meeting and then kind of decline gradually after the meeting. And no matter what we tried to do, we just couldn't get it up to meeting levels at any other time of the year. And I think that's okay. I don't think that your event has to last all year to be a good event, but to get people excited about it. With that said, the theme of the event is how to make your event, the theme of the webinar is how to make your event last longer, and I think that you can certainly plan to share content for maybe the first, 3 or 4 months after your event. And I think an editorial calendar is a great idea. Maybe you can tie it in with other marketing that you're doing. For example, let's say you have a smaller conference coming up on a related topic. You could perhaps share some of the content from your big conference that was on the same subject, or some of the same speakers that would be attending your new event, things like that.
And also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I wanted to just say that, that's my view, and I know that there are others who disagree, so, I'm certainly open for discussion on that.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And one thing I was going to add, too, in addition to sort of this, proactive pushing content out that we've been talking about, if you set up communities that enable your audiences to communicate with each other, whether that's through Facebook or LinkedIn or a lot of show organizers have proprietary social media formats. If you set up those opportunities for them, then that sort of will engage opportunities to engage in discussions throughout the year as well. I was recently at an AASAE conference about a year ago, the annual meeting, where there was one presentation that really engaged the audience, and they went ahead onto a Collaborate site on ASAE and set up their own little group, and they continued talking about the topic and sharing information over the course of the year, and then they got back together as a group at the following ASAE. So that's kind of, just one nice example of how you can extend the life of it just by providing those opportunities. There was one other question that I wanted to throw out there before we get back onto our specific information that we're presenting, and that was also asked by Marion about how the presenters feel about the organization earning money on their presentations.
That is something that we've it's actually never really come up. We do ask our presenters to sign a release that gives us permission to use their presentation in this recorded sessions package. So I suppose if they were unhappy about it, or if they didn't like the idea of us earning money, they would simply decline to give permission. But it's honestly not something that's ever been a problem for us.
Thanks, Martha. At this point, we want to put out another polling question for the audience to answer. And that is, we want to ask, how many content marketing tactics are you using for your meeting or show? And you can take a couple of minutes to think about this, because I'm going to talk about an interesting study that was recently put out by the Content Marketing Institute that might help you think about this in a little bit more detail. So according to the Content Marketing Institute, which we all feel is a tremendous source of knowledge and information about content marketing, B2B marketers in general use an average of 13 different content marketing tactics. And of these tactics, 92% cite social media other than blog posts as the most frequently used, followed by e-newsletters, 83%, and articles on their website, 81%. Interestingly, infographics as a tactic saw the biggest rise in usage from 51% last year to 62% this year. So check on the results of the poll. We can see that 50% of the people who have answered so far say 1 to 4, 42% say 5 to 8, and 8% say 9 to 12. So I think that that's very interesting and, again, maybe a good source of questions or conversations as we progress further along here in our presentation. At this point, I wanted to throw the conversation back to Allison and Martha to talk about the tools, how they select tools for their events.
This is Martha again. And I think for us, it comes down to what we can do for free, or as I addressed a little earlier, how we can generate additional revenue from what we're already doing. For example, some free tactics are that you can embed videos of presentations from the conference in emails that you were going to send anyway. Blogging is free. Social media is free. I also mentioned show dailies. You're producing that anyway, so you might as well get more use out of the content. In terms of generating revenue, we know that not everyone can attend event in person, and a live stream or an on-demand recording package is a way to allow you to reach people who want to attend but can't for whatever reason.
And for DDW, we try to look at analytics of tools that we use and best tailor them to our audience and then use a combination. For example, we use social media, and it's a great perk that it's free, but I think in the medical field there's still growth in the number of healthcare professionals that are using social media. So we incorporate it into our mix, but it's not the only tool that we use. So I suggest making an educated decision and a few things for you to think about. How do the tools that you're currently using resonate with your audience? When you go back after the meeting's over and you look at the analytics of everything, are people utilizing the tools that you're pushing, or are you finding that the numbers could be a little higher? The second is, are there best practices and trends from other organizations in your industry that you can refer to? There are tons of examples that I've seen out there, and it really can help you create a list of what might work at your meeting. And the third is to survey your members and attendees to see what and how they are using the different tools to receive content. Each year after DDW, we send a member survey, and one of our questions is, how do you like receiving content? How do you plan for the meeting? And then for the strategy for the next year, we can build based off of what we know that they use.
Thank you both, Allison and Martha. Now that we've talked about all these great ideas for content, how you can share it, and how to put together a plan, a big question that a lot of show organizers have is cost. That I think everybody, all show organizers agree that it's a great idea to get more content out there, but they wonder about what the costs are involved. So I want to push it back to all three of our panelists, Allison, Martha, and Liz, to just spend a couple minutes talking about how to determine the costs of a content marketing campaign.
Thanks, Kevin. So we have a budget process each summer where we can include costs for new projects. So when this time rolls around, the evaluations for the previous year's meeting are generally complete. So I'm able to make new recommendations and research the best practices that I just mentioned for event marketing. If I see that something performed particularly well, I'd budget the same or more for that tactic the next year. And if it did poorly, then I'd reevaluate to see what could be more beneficial for our specific audience.
So as Allison was kind of alluding to, I think that budgeting for content marketing isn't all that different from doing your marketing budget for other tactics and other strategies. Although for us, as I did mention before, we try to think in terms of what we can do for free, and we also kind of think of budget not just in terms of expenses for promotion, but also in terms of what revenue we can generate. And I gave the example earlier of our live stream that we implemented at the 11th hour last year and still earned a couple $1,000s of revenue on that. So I think you have to look at it not just in terms of expenses, but also in terms of possibly creating new revenue streams for your organization.
Yes, and I would just add that you can find low-cost ways to test new tactics and then get buy-in later on. One great thing about content marketing is there are a lot of places to reach out for inexpensive help. For example, the website elance.com allows you to post a project to find a freelancer who's willing to work on your project within your budget, and that is elance.com. It's elance.com.
Thank you all very much. At this point of our presentation, we're at the Q&A session here toward the end. So please feel free to ask any questions about our presentation, or if you have examples that you would like to share, please do that as well, because this is a great opportunity for a peer-to-peer discussion, and sharing ideas and thoughts is also very valuable. So while you're working on questions, please take time to do that. I just wanted to mention a couple of quick things while everybody is still on here thinking about their questions. One is that, I want you to feel free to contact us at any time, any of us. We're more than happy to help. I mean, we're all in this industry, supporting the industry, trying to help everybody do things better, and the four of us, as well as TSNN and the sponsors, really believe in content marketing and content sharing. I mean, this webinar is a perfect example of sharing content and the benefits that has. So please feel free to contact any of us at any time. And again, also, while you're coming up with those questions, I want to make sure that you're all here just so that I can really give a big thanks again to TSNN for putting the webinar together, to Discover the Palm Beaches, Florida for sponsoring this, and OnStream for sponsoring this as well. And OnStream gives us the technology to put these things together. So it really is valuable and essential to have these people support us. Also, this information will be recorded by TSNN, and it will be made available for you to look at and refer to at any time. So I will leave the information here, the website information, the URL for TSNN, so that you can make note of that and get back in touch with this at any time. So we still have a couple of questions coming in. Please feel free to continue asking questions or sharing your thoughts with us. Oh, I'm getting a lot of questions about whether I'm single or not. And I really shouldn't answer those here. I'm just kidding. We have one question that's come in that I'd like for the panel to think about. Are there any games? There's a lot of you read a lot about gamification these days and how much gamification is being used in trade shows and conferences to share content and get people engaged. So the question is, are there any games that help spread content marketing? I'd like to see if either Martha, Allison, or Liz are aware of any examples of that.
Well, Kevin, it's funny that you should ask, because our annual liver meeting is coming up in a couple of weeks here in early November, and we're actually planning to make games a big part of our on-site presence at the meeting. We're going to have an interactive touchscreen wall where participants can play games like taking a quiz to test their knowledge of our subject matter, but it's only going to be about 5 questions, so it'll kind of be a fun way to do that. And we'll have a leaderboard to kind of encourage some friendly competition over who gets the most right answers. We'll also have a puzzle game where they can put together photos from the sites of our upcoming meetings so that they can be exposed to the dates that they can save for those meetings, and also get to see a pretty picture of the destination. And we'll also have a memory game, which is that, if you remember from being a kid, or if you have little kids, it's that game where you turn over the cards to find the matching picture. But instead of using little pictures of flowers or animals, we're going to actually use the covers of our publications to make sure that, everyone gets exposed to the publications that we have available. So we're kind of using that as kind of a fun break for people who are going to be concentrating all day in these very serious workshops and seminars, but also kind of trying to inject our brand a little bit into that. Maybe we can do another webinar at the end of November, and I can tell you how it worked.
That sounds great. And I'm curious to know about different games that people are using and whether they're using them in their conferences or using them afterwards to share content, because it is something that's talked about a lot now, and I'd be curious to know how successful that is. We have another question, too. Specifically, this is from Jennifer about whether on-site tweet-ups are effective in our opinions. And I think we've probably all been involved with them or have had them at our shows. So it would be interesting to hear what the presenters think about that.
Well, I personally think that online or on-site tweet-ups are a great thing because you can find out via Twitter ahead of time who's going to be at the event, make your connections. If the show actually organizes it, then there's a central meeting point for everyone. You can also just encourage tweet-ups among attendees or exhibitors themselves, and they can choose their place and time. But I think they're great. And I also wanted to add to the game question a second ago that I think using like trivia, show trivia, like just to see if people know the facts about your show on social media ahead of time can be just a fun thing to do as well.
I also agree, and I think that tweet-ups are really good for an event. We had one last year, and I think we had about 15 people show, but it's really your most engaged attendees on social media. So we had them meet up for just about a half an hour at one simple location and gave some refreshments and, took a picture that we then were able to share on our social media channels. But then they could actually meet each other. Usually throughout the whole year, they're tweeting back and forth to each other. But a lot of times attendees don't actually meet each other. So this is a good opportunity for them to have some face-to-face connection.
Thank you. And another question from Doug. His question to the panelists is, have we found facilities and convention centers providing turnkey solutions to make event content sharing easier? For example, video and bandwidth packages to enhance session sharing. And I know that that's a concern that comes up from a lot of show organizers. So in your experience, Martha and Allison, have you found different facilities or convention centers that have provided those solutions to make it easier for you?
Well, Kevin, I'm the marketing person, not the meeting planning person, so it's a little out of my depth. But what I do know is that if you intend for your event to be social, or if you want to encourage your participants to share their live tweets or even share photos that you can then retweet or share on your social channels, anything like that, you really have to have reliable Internet. You either have to negotiate with the center in advance for them to provide it, or you need to find somewhere in your budget to buy out that Wi-Fi or get a sponsor to buy out the Wi-Fi because, nothing is worse than trying to tweet and not having the Internet to do it. And people get frustrated very quickly. So I don't know whether convention centers are offering that, but I do know that if you want your event to be more social media oriented, you really, really have to think about providing that for your attendees.
And I would echo that, and it might be interesting to hear Doug's opinion on this as well, because I know one of our shows that we provide the marketing for, and it's a big show, and for the first time at their last show, they live streamed their general session, and the technology was, didn't work well, and it really, so it really can turn out to be a negative if you don't have the right technology. Doug, did you have anything that you wanted to share about that?
Well, I put the question out there because it is an area that we are looking at aggressively right now, and I think it's an arena that we've got to be able to deliver on, not just us, but all the convention centers across the country have to really start looking at is do we make it easy to come in and content share, and are those packages every bit there like a menu on the BEOs and the catering menus? It should just be there and be available turnkey and packaged, so that you're not getting a deer in the headlights stare when you ask for a certain amount of bandwidth to make all the things happen that you're talking about here in this session. So we're actually aggressively looking at it right now with a couple big hybrid meeting solution partners, and we're just trying to get our arms wrapped around what would planners be looking for so that it's easier to come in. So I think that you're probably just going to see a lot more of this. It's going to be easier to enter a facility and have this stuff available in packaged format for you, and then hopefully at lower cost so that it's affordable and easy to do.
That's very encouraging, Doug. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more time that there's a lot of great information out there about content marketing, particularly B2B content marketing. But what we're trying to do is frame it specifically for trade shows, conferences, meetings, and things like that. So, again, I encourage you, if you have any questions after this, please don't hesitate to email us. Between Liz and Allison and Martha, you've got a lot of experience with professional content management specifically for trade shows, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. So,
yeah, and Kevin, maybe each of the presenters, we could give out our Twitter handles as well if people want to connect with us on social media. I'm tweeting for Frost Miller, and it's just at Frost Miller. And I don't know if Allison and Martha want to put yours out as well.
Sure. My personal Twitter account is at Allison Parcells, ALISONPARSELLS. And I also tweet for Digestive Disease Week, which is at DDW Meeting, which is DDWMEETING.
And I'm at AASLD News. That's A as in apple, SLD as in dog, news.
Great idea, Liz. Thank you. So, again, I'll just want to thank everybody for participating and thank TSN again and remind you that you can get this information from TSNN after the show at this URL that's here. And once again, just thank OnStream for the technology to put this together and Discover Palm Beaches, Florida for sponsoring this as well. Arlene, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to say anything else at this point.
Thank you very much for everybody joining us today. As usual, we got a great education from our panelists. And like Kevin said, thank you to all of our sponsors. And check back on TSNN for the recording of this session on the top tab of our homepage, just click webinars, and it will be there in the next 3 business days or be emailed to you. Thank you very much again, and we will see you next webinar.